As Sian mentioned, my name's Shona Nicol. I work in Scottish Government. I head up a technical data policy team, and we're all really, I guess, focused on helping improve the way the public sector in Scotland use and think about data. And I also have Sally in the team here. She is hopefully going to help with some of the Q&A later on. So it will just be me talking for the time being. But anyway, we know in Scottish Government, and probably all of us here are kind of data professionals, we know that data underpins so much of what Scottish Government is trying to achieve. And it's not just around that providing, high quality services, but some of this is about how do we use data to help us tackle some of those big challenges that we have in Scotland around things like eradicating child poverty, growing economy, tackling the climate emergency. And I think, it's not enough that it's just data people who worry about data. It's everyone in all of these organisations has to think about data because it's the foundation to helping us solve some of these problems. So this is where we would like to get to, I guess. But what we find when we go out and speak to the public sector in Scotland is much more this type of slide where we've got lots of challenges that are quite difficult for individual organisations maybe to solve. So we've got things like we don't use data standards properly, so our data isn't really that interoperable. We have problems with the quality because of the way the data is collected. We have issues with upskilling. Do we have the right skills within organisations? We maybe have legacy systems that are making it really difficult for data sharing as well. So we've got lots of challenges, and they lead to quite a lot of frustration within the public sector because it's like we know we need to do things, for example, like standards. We need to make sure people are using standards, but it's really difficult to persuade maybe others in organisations that these kind of things are really important. So and for lots of people they know they need to do something with data, but they're not really sure what it is that they need to do, and they have a picture about where they want to get to, but not necessarily that journey that they're going to have to take. And sometimes that journey can feel really difficult. It can feel a little bit confusing. You maybe don't know where to start. There's no obvious examples of other people who've gone through that journey already. But we also know that in Scotland, in the public sector, that there's lots of really good work going on, lots of people using data to make big changes. But part of the problem is people don't always know what's out there, what great resources are already there that they could use to help them start that journey. So we kind of found all of this out, I guess, as we did a lot of work with the public sector in Scotland. And I guess what we wanted to do then was think about, well, how do we really truly understand the challenges that the public sector are facing? And then how do we help them? Because some of these challenges, like I said, are not necessarily things that will be solved at an organisational level. It'll have to be looked at much more at the national level. So what we decided we would do is we would start running a data maturity programme for public sector organisations in Scotland. We decided to do this as a cohort, so we would bring in between 8 and 10 organisations every year. We are now on our 5th cohort. That just started in September earlier on this year, and we've got 10 organisations going through that. And this maturity programme, I guess there's 2 key aspects to it. One is that we're going to support that cohort public sector organisations to go through sort of these 3 stages. So just quickly, these 3 stages are preparing. So really get them to understand their own organisational objectives around data, like where do they want to be with data, and really making them think about how data supports their strategic goals, and the narrative around that as well. We're not going in there going, this is what we think you need. They have to decide what they need as an organisation. Then we ask them to do a bit of learning. So this is where we get them to take the data maturity assessment from Data Orchard that helps them understand like maybe where they are now. We also suggest that they run workshops and interviews alongside the assessments, because this is really a key stage in that kind of raising awareness of data across their organisation. And then the final stage is planning. So like you've done all of that work understanding your ambition, you've done a little bit of work to understand where your organization is right now. So how are you going to plan out that data improvement journey then as well? So what are the first steps that you're going to take? And so we get them to think about the outcomes. Like we try and get people to do outcome-based plans, which can be quite difficult as well. And throughout all of that process, we in Scottish Government learn lots about the challenges that they face as they're going along this journey, and then what kind of things they need, maybe from us, but from others in the public sector as well. Like what kind of help and guidance can we put in place to make this just that little bit easier? So that's the principles behind this data maturity programme. It's 6 months long. It gives people dedicated time for data improvements, and we give them access to a whole range of other training and support as well. So we do things like data governance training, and we train them a little bit about outcomes and that kind of thing as well. It's all free of charge. We take the hit for this, so there's no cost involved. They just have to have the time, staff resources to do this. And we don't necessarily expect everyone to complete those 3 stages in 6 months. Believe it or not, that isn't an awful lot of time. But what we do want them to do is to do that exploration, do that testing, sharing the knowledge, because we find that different organisations, and I'll maybe come on to this in a minute, different organisations in the cohort will be at different places in their maturity journey. So this is just very quickly, we've done 45 organisations, all different sizes, all different maturity levels. Could probably write massive papers about those differences. But we're learning so much about, how, like, what are some of the challenges in the public sector in Scotland. And then I guess what we also do is we reflect back after each cohort about the types of things that we think people learn. So for individuals, you can read the slide here, but a lot of the thing is about gaining confidence. So we give people that confidence to act. It gives them space to really think about, like, what is it that what they're trying to do with data? How does their organisation value it? And giving them just space to test out different ideas. We also, I guess, give them a little bit more. So the assessment itself gives them quite a lot of insight into their own organisation, as do speaking to people and running workshops. But we were also able to point them to other resources and opportunities that are, I guess, kind of available in Scotland. And this is just a list of some of the sort of communities that we've been building up over the last few years to really support people who are going through this programme of work. But at maybe the strategic level, it can help with that beginning to discuss why data is important in your organisation. Like often we see these maturity assessments are like the way to start that discussion. Maybe understanding and seeing the journey that other organisations are on as well, and that they're not alone in this. That they're all working towards the same direction. All of which is about improving the way that they do their data-informed decisions within their organisation, being more transparent about those decisions, being more innovative, and being more collaborative with other parts of the public sector as well. And this was, you've seen some of these fish diagrams already, but this, I guess, was cohort 3 or 4. I can't quite remember which one now. And you can see here, there's similarities. We've got lots of similarity in the scoring, but you can see that maybe some in the organisation are just a little step behind, and others in the cohort a little step ahead. And actually, we think that's been really useful for the cohorts to sort of be able to see people that are at different stages, learn from them. And I think it's been really interesting to see that although some organisations may feel more advanced in some areas, they're maybe less so in others, and they can all learn from each other. Again, this was just to maybe showcase that for cohort 3 or 4, I can't quite remember which one, we had 9 organisations. This was a question about right skills and capabilities. And you can see that there's some we're getting quite different answers from organisations. Now, some of this might be because they are more mature. It might be to do with the size of them. Within the Scottish public sector, we have, some of the biggest local authorities, with 30,000 people in them. We have some really small bodies that maybe only have 100 or so as well. So you're getting lots of variety in size as well as maturity, and you're going to see slightly different results. But at the same time, what we do see is a lot of commonalities about like the next steps that people take. So challenges are quite similar. Maybe the way that you solve those challenges is going to be slightly different depending on perhaps the size of the organization, the way that data is embedded in that organization as well. So what we see people moving on to next, there's the strategy, that development of the plan. We see people starting to think about data governance. We see them start to think about data discovery, cataloging the assets that they have, thinking about standards, the way that they might form a coherent team within their organization that's about data, things like literacy and culture as well, and looking at skills. So we see lots of commonalities in the kind of next steps. And that means that, sorry, if I just go back a slide, that means that what we're doing from this is we're starting to develop guidance to help them with some of these steps. So we're doing lots of stuff on that, what a strategy might look like. We've got some checklists and some work that we do on data governance. We've got some really good guidance that we're developing on metadata and data discovery. We're building all of these bits of guidance with the public sector. So, it's making sure that these are going to work and be useful to them as well. And then finally, lots of challenges, again, similar ones, maybe lots of lack of resources, time and budget. But part of that is that persuasion that data is important to their organisation. We see often that organizations' priorities just change. Something happens internally, and that the priorities will just change. We see restructuring going on in organizations, maybe when they're halfway through the 6-month program of work, and that can cause lots of problems. But you've got to be adaptable when you're running something like this to understand that these types of things might happen. And then that lack of maybe buy-in and support at senior and middle level management. So just very quickly to sort of tie into that, one of the things I guess we discovered with the data maturity program that we've been running for the last few years is we regularly hear about sort of the challenges that data professionals maybe encounter when they're trying to enact that change that they want to see in organizations. And one of the things that that we've been hearing from that data maturity cohort and some other parts of the community as well is that having some kind of long-term vision around public sector data could help them provide maybe a little bit of context for what they're trying to achieve locally, give them a little bit of weight behind their conversations. So earlier this year, we started to scope out what a vision for public sector data in Scotland might look like. We sort of co-produced this with a group of people from the public, private and third sector. And we now have this vision is live. If you want to go and look at it, you can look at the QR code. We are also really interested in people's views on it. But this has all come out of that bit of work that we've been doing on data maturity, that cohort work, and learning the things that are going to be really helpful to people, and what kind of stuff do we in Scottish Government need to put in place to make that journey just that little bit easier. So I'm going to stop now and I'm going to hand back over to Sian.